Hey, in this video I will go over how to level your crafters to level 90 in the most efficient way possible using a variety of methods. I'll break everything down and assume you are completely new to crafting. Before we get started, let's go over a few things. First of all, make sure you have some gil to spare. We will need to buy gear and some materials occasionally, and even though I will show you some ways to save gil in the process, you do need to spend a little bit. Something in the range of 1 to 3 million should do the trick for now. Also, you should level your gatherers before starting your crafters ideally. This way you'll be able to save gil on materials by gathering them yourself. This can be especially useful in the level range from 50 to 80, where some of the materials that we need will be a bit more expensive. To make all of this a bit easier on your armory chest space, you should also level all crafters together and keep them about in the same level range. This way you can use a single gear set for all your crafters and don't run the risk of accidentally deleting gear that you could use for another crafter job. Keep in mind that leveling all of these is not an easy task that you can do in a day or two. I'm not your dad, but I'm still going to tell you to pace yourself on this. Just watch something on the side and occasionally level your crafters. Otherwise you'll burn yourself out before you even get to level 90. Alright, let's get started with the first stage. This is also called the quick synth stage. Using this method, we're going to get all of your crafters from level 1 to 21 using just basic recipes. In this level range, your only realistic other option is doing leave quests. However, I think doing quicksynth is not only more comfortable, it's also faster. Quicksynth is an alternative to regular crafting. In the crafting menu, you can see the quicksynth button right here. This allows you to quickly synthesize a large amount of certain items after you've crafted them once. The materials needed for these crafts are extremely cheap and can all be purchased from the vendor inside the respective Crafters Jobs Guild. And all we need to get to level 21 is the raw XP that we earn from completing these crafts. To speed this process up a little bit, there are company issue engineering manuals. You can get these from your Grand Company's quartermaster and they only cost a few storm seals. This is useful right now because we are only relying on the XP gained from the crafts. However, if you don't have your Grand Company unlocked yet, or if you really don't feel like looking for it, just do the crafts. You know, go into the kitchen, make some coffee, it'll be fine. It will just take a little bit longer in the range of a couple minutes. So as an example, let's say we want to level our culinarian. We're going to find a level 1 recipe, figure out what materials we need, we'll talk to the vendor, and just buy a bunch of that material. As you can see, it's dirt cheap. We'll have to synthesize this item once, and after that we can just use quick synthesis to make as many of these as we want. This is by far the most comfortable way to get to level 21, and you should do this for every single crafter before you move on to the next step. Now at this point we'll want to buy our first set of gear, and for all gearing from this moment onwards we're going to use a website called Final Fantasy XIV Crafting. I wish I'd had this website back in the day because I wasted so much gil leveling up just buying gear pieces that I didn't actually need. So to use this website, you just select the crafter job that you want to level, you enter the level, and then just press Get My Gear. At this point you'll get a level range, and whenever you're supposed to replace a gear piece, it's going to be highlighted in orange like this. Because we just reached level 21, you're going to have to buy all the items in the 21 bracket, or alternatively you can also craft them, which would be the cheaper alternative in many cases. However, if you do decide to go down that route, make sure that the materials are actually cheaper than just buying the item from the vendor. Especially in this early level range, the items from the vendor are actually really cheap. To check who can craft an item or where to buy an item, you're gonna want to check below the symbol. So for example, for Culinarian we can see that the Initiate Skillet can be crafted by an armorer. Alternatively, we can click on this symbol right here and find out where the vendor is that we can get this item from. Every time you feel like you need a crafting gear upgrade, you should check out this website and just upgrade your items accordingly. However, you don't have to follow the website exactly, as sometimes you can skip a certain level range. For our next step, for example, we'll be using a method to craft the same item from level 21 to level 41, and theoretically you won't have to upgrade a single item in that entire level range. Problems will start coming in if you want to upgrade your gear for the next stage, but because you're still sitting on level 21 gear, you're not able to craft the gear that you would need for that stage. So if you're going to craft your own gear, make sure it's always up to date. If you're going to simply buy gear, then just skip until the next stage. Before we get to the next stage, it's important that you understand a few things about crafting if you're a complete beginner. First of all, you need to understand what a macro is. You can find the macro section in-game by going into User Macros. Here you can see a bunch of macro slots, and each one of these slots allows you to input another macro. For us, this is going to be useful because we're going to use it to automate the crafting process. Essentially, the macros are going to press the buttons for us. This way you can get to level 90 without even knowing what any of your abilities do. Now, I do recommend you figure out how to actually craft, but it is actually not a requirement, because even at the high level, outside of perhaps expert recipes, you can use this method that I'm about to teach you for everything. Now, this is the point where a lot of people would just give you a bunch of macros to get to the highest level, and I'll do that too. They will be in the video description. However, I'll also show you a way to find your own macros in case the one that I give you doesn't work for some reason. Maybe there's a game update or one of your gear pieces is slightly outdated. This will just make sure that you always get a macro that will work for you. For this purpose, we're going to use the website FinalFantasyXIV-teamcraft.com. Again, link in the video description. Now, if you want to find a crafting rotation for an item that you want to create, enter the item name, select the job that you want to use, and then enter the stats that you currently have on that job. You can find your craftsmanship and your control in the character screen, and your CP is shown next to your HP as the mana replacement. Then tick your current level and whether or not you're using any food. We'll talk a little bit about the food that you should be using later on. After that, click Apply Stats, apply consumables, and then on the left side click Rotation Finder. This will show you a bunch of possible rotations that are going to work for the item that you're going to craft with the gear that you currently have. Click whichever rotation looks fine to you, and Teamcraft is going to show you a breakdown of the craft. Now at this point you want to go to the left side again and select Generate in-game macro. Here you don't have to do anything except for copy the text and paste it into the macro screen that we open in-game. It should look something like this. After that, just name your macro and drag it to your hotbar. To test whether this works, just find the item that you want to craft and select Trial Synthesis. Click the macro button and you're going to see whether the craft finishes just fine and whether the quality is good enough. Now, starting from level 21 all the way to level 80, we're going to use something called Ishgardian Restoration. We're also going to use a few other methods that I'm going to mention after we're done with the Ishgardian Restoration. That will make this entire thing a bit more economical, but will take a bit longer because they are time gated. The Ishgardian Restoration takes place inside the Firmament, which is a place that you have to unlock in Ishgard. To unlock the Ishgardian Restoration, you'll need any class on level 60, and also you need to finish the main scenario quest Litany of Peace. I'll put a link down in the video description to help you find the quest. There's actually an official Final Fantasy XIV page that will describe the details to you. In addition to this, you'll need to unlock Collectables, which is a system that you can get by completing the level 50 quest Inscrutable Tastes. Again, another link in the video description. Once you have the Firmament unlocked, head over there by using the Aetheryte inside Ishgard, and then talk to the Collectible Appraiser. On this screen you will see various craftable items. These are so-called collectibles. These are different from other items because their only purpose is to be turned into the collectible appraisers. You'll be able to see the various items that the job that you're on right now can turn into the collectible appraiser. The higher your level, the better collectibles you can craft. To check the collectibles you can craft right now, open the crafting log and then click on Level Base Recipes, Ishgardian Restoration, and then whatever the current restoration is. In this case it's Restoration 4. And here you can see the various items that we'll be able to craft as we level up. So at level 20 we're able to craft hemp milk, at level 40 sesame cookies, and so on. The materials required for early levels of this are usually pretty cheap. You can buy all of them on the market board. However, all of these Skybuilder materials can also be gathered inside the diadem. To head into the diadem, you'll need a gatherer at the appropriate level, and then you'll have to talk to the mission commander. I'll recommend you do this for materials level 50 and above, but you can do it for the 20 to 50 materials as well. However, those are generally so cheap on the market board that it would probably be a good idea to save yourself the time and just buy them. From level 21 to 41, you're going to need about 25 crafts per crafter. So using the macro, this doesn't take very long at all. The macros you should be using will be in the video description, but again, if any of them don't work for you or you want to craft anything else, you should use TeamCraft to figure out a rotation for you. Ideally, you should be using food while you're crafting, not only for the experience gain, but also because crafting food will provide you with valuable stats that are going to make your craft a bit easier or possible in some cases. The food that I recommend all the way through for simplicity's sake is Sai Tu Vunu. This can be bought from the market board relatively cheap. You just need to make sure that you buy the high quality version, which is indicated by the symbol next to the stack. This is because high quality food has better stats than normal quality food. To show you how this works, we're going to do this process on my Culinarian. I've got the various items that we need. We'll head into the crafting menu, find the level 20 craft that we want to do. We take the macro from the video description or from TeamCraft and paste it into the macro screen. We drag the button to a hotbar and then we start the craft, press the macro, and that should do the trick in crafting the collectible. For collectible items, the quality is measured in so-called collectability. The higher the collectability, the more XP you're going to get from the collectible appraiser. It's not that bad if you can't get the highest collectability rating immediately, just make sure you upgrade your gear as you go along. Afterwards, you can talk to the collectible appraiser and turn in the items that you just crafted. For turning in items, you'll get level ups at a really fast rate, and also you get Kupo stamps. This is basically a little gambling minigame that allows you to make some of the money that you lost back. Just talk to the lady next to the collectible appraiser and you might be able to make some of your money back. At this point you should craft the level 20 item all the way up to level 41 and then switch to the next one. Whenever you feel like you should upgrade the item that you're currently crafting, you should make sure beforehand that you're actually able to craft said item. You do this by clicking on Trial Synthesis and then while running food, using whatever macro you want to use to craft said item. This will tell you how much collectability you can get and whether you can actually finish the craft. And if you're not there yet, you'll likely need some more item upgrades. To get some of these item upgrades, depending on what Final Fantasy XIV crafting is telling you, you might have to level to awkward level ranges. Let's say you need a gear piece to craft the level 50 to 60 item, but the item that you need is level 53. You'll have to craft the level 40 item until you reach that breakpoint. When you're buying materials, especially for the later stages, I highly recommend you use the website Universalis, which gives you a breakdown of the market board on other worlds. You can use this to find the cheapest deal on whatever material you need. Using this method, you might be able to save a couple 100,000 gil. The Ishgardian Restoration will be the main non-time gated tool that you're going to use while leveling up if you want to do it faster. However, there are other methods that are time gated that we'll get into now. Just know that you can always return to the firmament and craft a few items whenever you feel like leveling up your crafters. The first method that we're going to use to supplement our Ishgardian Restoration crafting is the tribal daily quests. There's always one tribe per expansion that's going to allow you to do daily quests, which will have you craft various easy items. For A Realm Reborn, that's the Ixal, Heavensward Mughals, Stormblood Namazu, and Shadowbringers Dwarfs. For Endwalker, they will likely add a beast tribe that allows you to level your crafters at some point, but as the time of making this video, this is not released yet. So let's say you are at level 70 and you want to get your crafter to level 80, you could do the Shadowbringer Dwarf Beast Tribe quests once a day to level your crafter additionally. This is a pretty good way of getting some additional XP for free. Generally, the crafts are pretty easy, but you do want to make sure your gear is roughly in the right range, and then just export a macro or craft it yourself if you know enough about the abilities. The good thing here is that some of the items they will ask you to craft do not have to be high quality, so it is actually pretty easy to do in many cases. Additionally, all of the beast tribes have a mount at the end of the reputation grind. So this way you can both level your crafters and make progress towards your mount at the same time. You have access to 12 beast tribe quests a day, but generally you will only be able to do 3 for the crafter beast tribe. Once you have the daily quests unlocked, just head there once a day and accept whatever quests they give you. You do have to be on a crafter to accept them. The quests themselves are pretty easy to do, nothing you shouldn't be used to already. In addition to daily quests, you have the option of doing supply missions for your Grand Company once per day. These can give a ridiculous amount of XP, and this was actually the primary way I leveled my crafters from level 60 to level 80. To do them, head into your timers page, click on Next Mission Allowance and take a look at the items that you can turn into your supply officer. You can turn in 1 item per crafter per day, and ideally you want to turn in the high quality version because that will double the XP you gain. I'm not kidding when I'm saying I was getting 1 level per crafter per day using this method. The items that you need can be bought from the market board, but they are usually extremely overpriced. I'm talking 30,000 gil plus for each item in this list. This would come out to about 250,000 gil spent on this per day. However, all of these items can also be crafted. The materials are usually very reasonably priced on the market board, and I usually ended up spending between 10,000 and 30,000 gil depending on what materials I already had available. That is for all 8 items. You can easily make the gil back by crafting multiples of whatever item you're supposed to craft that day. You put them on the market board and people buy them up, doing exactly what I described earlier, buying the item from the market board straight up. These sell relatively slowly, but they do eventually sell. This is also a great method to make some gil in the late game. So my daily routine regarding supply missions used to be opening the timer page, screenshotting this page, and then having it up on a second screen. And then I would just run to the market board, open up my crafting log, and then search for 1 item after another, buy whatever materials I needed from the market board, and then just craft all items in a row. This process takes about 15 to 20 minutes and will advance all of your crafters by approximately 1 level. I highly recommend that you use this method, provided you can afford the daily 30,000 gil sink. But especially at later levels, it's actually cheaper to do this rather than using the Ishgardian Restoration, because the diadem items end up costing a lot of gil. The last method you can use to supplement your crafter leveling is so-called custom deliveries. These reset once a week and take only a few moments to complete. In addition to this, they award scripts which you can use to buy gear from the script exchanges. Custom deliveries are tied to special NPCs, and they will have their own little quest line attached to them. Essentially, you'll be crafting collectibles just like you already are for the Ishgardian Restoration. The custom delivery NPCs available right now are Slowy Aliapo for Heavensward, Nago for Stormblood, Kurenai for Stormblood, Atkiraj for Stormblood, Kaishir for Shadowbringers, L2 for Shadowbringers, Charlemagne for Shadowbringers, and finally Emilians for Endwalker. To do the custom deliveries, go into your timer page, Custom Deliveries, and figure out what item you want to craft. To do this, click on whatever NPC is in the level range of the crafter that you want to level. For example, if I want to get from level 80 to 90, I want to do the Emilian's Custom Deliveries. So I would click on her name, and that will give you a breakdown of the items that you can turn in. Search for the item that you need to craft inside your crafting log, and figure out what base material you need. The materials needed for crafting custom deliveries can always be bought from a vendor that is at least in the same city as the custom delivery NPC. If you're unsure where to find an item, there's a website called Garland Tools. Just put the material name in there, and it will show you which vendors sell that item. After that, craft a collectible with as high of a collectability as you can, and then turn them into the custom delivery NPC. Over time you will increase the NPC's satisfaction, but once you reach 5 out of 5 hearts, you won't suddenly stop being able to turn in items. You can just keep going afterwards and get the same amount of XP. Additionally, for getting the satisfaction of L2 to 5 out of 5 will give you a mount as well. There's a link to every single custom delivery NPC down in the video description. Depending on what level range you want to do, check those out. Going through every single one of them would simply break the scope of this video. And the websites also do a great job of explaining it. Once you reach level 80 on all of your crafters, we're going to enter the last stage. During this, we're just going to use regular collectibles, which we're going to turn into the expansion's collectible appraiser. You can find this guy in Razad Han. I believe there's a short quest line that you have to complete. And after that, we'll be using the same method that we've been using for the Ishgardian Restoration. However, this will use actual items that you can gather outside of the diadem as well. So talk to the collectible appraiser and figure out what item you want to craft. Look it up in your crafting log, and then figure out what items you need. A lot of them you'll be able to gather. Some of them will be relatively cheap on the market board, while some of them will be more expensive. If you do decide to buy items at this stage, this will probably be the most expensive part of leveling your crafter. And if you do decide to gather all of the materials, it will be a little bit cheaper, but it will take quite a while. If you don't feel like spending too much gil on this, you can just keep going with the custom deliveries, the expert deliveries, and also the daily quests whenever they get released for Endwalker. In addition to this, there's another system between level 80 and 90 called the Studium Deliveries. You might sigh and say, oh, another system, but in this case it's actually pretty simple. These are just quest lines where you can turn in collectibles, and these actually award a ton of XP. Simply switch to any crafter and check out Charlian. You'll see the Studium up in the north side, provided you've completed the level 81 quest, Sound the Bell, Schools Inn, during the Endwalker MSQ. Every couple of levels a quest will appear that you can complete, and there are 3 quest lines for crafters. There's Jude for astronomy, which includes carpenters, leather workers and weavers. De Broy for medicine, which includes alchemist and culinarian. And Boric for archaeology, which will include blacksmith, armorer and goldsmith. I don't recall exactly what the level breakpoints were or how many quests there are, but there's quite a few and it's a lot of XP that you don't want to miss out, especially to save gil if you're using the collectible method. So let's summarize. Level 1 to 21, you're going to use Quicksynth. From level 21 to 80, you're going to use the Ishgardian Restoration, but especially from 21 to 60 because you can get past this stage really quickly. In addition to this, you can use the Ixal, Mughal, Namazu and Dwarf daily quests, as these give a decent amount of XP and also award amount at the end. You should be using all 12 custom deliveries once a week. You can track these using the timers page. And you should do the expert deliveries with your Grand Company personnel officer once per day. Starting at level 80, you can use all the methods I mentioned before, except you should replace the Ishgardian Restoration with the Collectible Appraiser in Razad Han, and you should make sure to do your Studium Deliveries in Charlian. During this whole process, you will use Final Fantasy XIV crafting.com to figure out what gear you want to use. From time to time, you may be able to use scripts that you get from doing custom deliveries by talking to a script exchange person and getting a gear piece from there. This way you can get some decent gear without having to craft it. The gear is available at 50, 60, 70 and 80. And that's how you get your crafters from level 1 to level 90. I do realize that this was quite a long video, but I didn't know how to shorten all of this information in this case. Crafting is just pretty complicated and it took me a while to wrap my head around all of this as well. So just take it slow, explore one system at a time, and don't rush into it too much. Spend a lot of gil on something that you ultimately don't actually need. Make liberal use of the trial synthesis feature, and make sure you get used to teamcraft if you don't plan on actually learning any of the abilities to generate your own macros. As an alternative to this, I'm going to start working on a video explaining every single crafter ability and how to make your own rotations. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe to the channel. For now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.